right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Again, this is Julie Ryan Silva, and I work with Jillian Copeland at Main Street. And before we get started, I'd like to explain how this webinar works. Participants in the call are muted, so we cannot hear you, but you are able to ask questions by typing in the box on the side of your screen. So you can type in your questions at any time, but we will be saving them until the end. We'll do a Q&A session after the presentation. Also, if we're unable to answer your questions during the webinar, we will get back to you afterwards. If you find the sound quality is not good for you and you're using the speakers on your computer, we recommend turning off the audio on your computer and instead calling in using the number that you'll see on the side of your screen. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out an email afterwards with information about how to watch and listen. And we'll also send out a PDF of the slides. So I will now turn it over to Main Street founder Jillian Copeland.
Thank you, Julie. Hello to all, welcome. We're really excited. This is our first webinar. We hope it is going to be very informative for all of you. And we're going to start sharing a little bit about ourselves. So I'm Jillian, hello, and Mary DeScott, who's going to introduce himself in a few minutes. I'm going to start with, we have 4 sons, and they are 18 to 24 years old, and our almost 20-year-old son's name is Nickel, and he has global disabilities, and he's also awesome. And when Nickel was about 6 or 7 years old, he was in a program that really wasn't working well for him, and it wasn't holistic or comprehensive or even collaborative, and we decided we wanted something better. There was really a void in the market, a need for a school like this, and we created the Diener School in 2007 to serve Nickel and other students with disabilities. And it's still it's still operating, and we have 50 kids, and it's an awesome place, and we're really proud that we were able to educate Nickel and others who needed this type of education. After the Diener School, we really looked at what life was going to look like for Nickel as he grew into his future, into adulthood, and saw that there were a lot of limitations and not a lot of things out there, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But that is really why we created Main Street. And now I'm going to introduce my husband, Scott.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Copeland, and I'm the co-founder of some sorts of Main Street with Jillian. I like to joke that I'm really Jillian's chief of staff, and
he's a good one too,
which has been a lot of fun. I am a real estate developer, principal of RST Development, which is a family-owned company that develops multifamily assets along the East Coast, Pennsylvania down to Florida. And as part of that, inside our family of businesses is Triangle Construction, which is a general contractor, and Hercules Real Estate Services, or Hercules Living, which is our management company. And all 3 of those entities, RST Development, Triangle Construction, and Hercules Living, will be affiliated with this project. And you know, our firm and the folks that have been with my firm for many, many years have played a big role in some affordable housing projects over the last 18 to 20 years.
So we're going to talk a little bit about our motivation for Main Street. And before we do, I just want to make it clear that this webinar today is really about how we got to where we are now with Main Street. We're not going to talk a lot about the mission and the building and what we see in the future and how excited we are for that. That's going to be hopefully in a future webinar. But we've had so many inquiries from around the country about how to do a Main Street, an inclusive housing community, and that's really what this is about. So we can answer other questions about Main Street through the webinar. We can answer them later, but for now we're going to just talk about how we got here. So our motivation is really, as I said, our son Nickel, who's 20. Like so many, Nickel is about to reach the cliff, and many of you have been there, and it's quite a struggle. I'm not going to go into a lot of the specifics about the cliff, but a brief description for those who don't know is the cliff happens when young adults with disabilities reach the age of 21, they lose all entitlements in most states. And what that means is they lose academic, educational, social opportunities, and many don't have access or abilities to connect with community. So their lifeline and the lifeline for their caregivers, usually moms or dads or siblings, ceases. It's a very difficult time for most people. So much like filling the void at Diener 12 years ago when we started the school, we are now finding that our community, I'm sure yours as well, is interested and hungry for something that gives adults meaning and passion and purpose, and that is what leads us to Main Street. So what we have done, what we did in the very beginning is really look at our market, look at people with disabilities, adults with disabilities, family members, caregivers, and other stakeholders to interview them, to discuss with them, what does your life look like? What are you missing? Where is your void? And I think, one of the most important things we've learned along the way is the old saying that says, nothing about us without us. And that came directly from people with disabilities, for people like Scott and I, who are trying to create something great for others, and not understanding that we don't want to presume to know how others want to live, right? So we went to almost 75 people with disabilities, their caregivers, and asked the question, how do you want to live? We talked to people with visual disabilities, with hearing cognitive mobility issues. They all have different needs and have different interests, and that is really how we designed the concept of Main Street. Additionally, or concurrently, we did an online survey for people we didn't get to speak to, and that was two separate surveys, one for individuals with disabilities and one for their caregivers. And we asked basic information, but critical information about where people wanted to live, what kind of residence did they want to live in, did they want to have a roommate, what social activities were people interested in doing? And that really helped us design the ground floor, the community center spaces, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. It also really validated that people need a place to connect. People want to be invested. So the survey was valuable not just for community buy-in and grant purposes, but really to help us design the space and validate that what we were researching, the statistics that we were finding globally really matched the anecdotal information and the survey information that we found, that people want a place to be, they want to live independently, affordability is key, accessibility obviously is key, and that many people are feeling very disconnected and isolated and lonely. And so we decided at that point Main Street was going to be the place to be, a place for everyone to belong.
So with all that information in tow, with the survey results, and in addition to those one-on-one surveys and the monkey survey that Jillian conducted, she also researched other programs throughout the country, perhaps the world, either physically or through the internet. And so we came back to the table with sort of enhancing our concept, the mission of what we thought, as Jillian just said, was what we thought we wanted. And we had all this evidence now that proved that it would come through, and we made the adjustments to the goals as we kept moving forward this concept. And we put together a little, what I like to call a kitchen cabinet, some very close advisors, many parents that have become board members that had a very similar interest in finding a solution to the same problem that we found ourselves in. I'm assuming the same problem that many of you find yourselves in, as to what the next phase of our child's life was going to look like. And in that setting, we came up with the name of Main Street. We developed the tagline, excuse me, and the mission statement, and some of the ideals that have driven us still to this day, which is live, learn, work, play, and thrive. So it was a really important piece to pull the community in, and we'll talk about community in a lot more detail in a few minutes, but it was the beginning of a community, and we sat around, you see the photo on the screen here, we sat around in many settings like this where we just exchanged ideas and thought through what the next steps look like, and how real we could make this project, how we could all work together to get it off the ground. And it did, some of the main things that came out of it, other than the tagline and the mission statement and these ideals, was what we felt was important, and the validation of it, of having both the residential and the community spaces available to the community. It may not work for everybody, but it certainly was a main goal of Main Street. And as we continued, inclusion obviously became a very big part of Main Street and remains so. And the whole project was designed physically and from a financing standpoint around this concept of inclusion. And we wanted to try to create as many ongoing inclusive opportunities as humanly possible. And that's why the opportunity to have both the residential and the community spaces in the same structure was so important. And then beyond the building is a 70-unit building. So unfortunately, it's a relatively small building, and 25% of our units will be set aside for individuals with varying needs. But on the ground floor, there's over 10,000 square feet of again, community space. And that is open up to just beyond the residents of the building, but also to members of the community that some will have disabilities, some won't. It doesn't matter. It just creates an inclusive opportunity for interactions all the time. And I'm proud to say, as of May of this year, we have over 1,300 members that are really looking forward to this building being built and participating. But out of these kind of kitchen cabinet, smaller community events and meetings and brainstorming ideas, the three driving themes, which are really critical and something that we keep in the forefront of our minds all the time as we're moving forward on this, is affordability, which was a very important piece, and I'm sure is for most, inclusivity, as we spoke about, and sustainability. And the sustainability piece is not just to the construction or the standard sustainable of development. It is more so to the operation of Main Street. The apartment building will operate and will be fine, and, will always be occupied and things of that nature. But the sustainability, the important thing is to be able to sustain all the various programming that will occur at Main Street. So that's a very meaningful driving principle for us. Getting organized. So, and you'll forgive me that it may not be 100% linear in terms of how this all happened, but generally this is how it happened. Early on, we launched the basic website that just outlined the mission and got something up and running, and obviously an opportunity to join. And Jillian and Julie were instrumental in putting out information that was critical to what we were trying to accomplish, and brought on a lot of people throughout. The other big piece was, the technical stuff of opening up bank accounts and credit card processing capabilities. And it sounds silly, but it was really turned out to be a very, very important piece to having people join in on various fundraising events and just becoming a member. The legal documents, we're very early on. We set ourselves up as a corporation that has, obviously is driven by a board of directors, but is a nonprofit. We'll get to that in a second. But the bylaws, the Artists Living Corporation, obviously the taxpayer ID number, so that you can do all the things stated above with the bank account and the credit card processing, is important to get done early on in the process. And then very early on, knowing sort of what our goals were and our missions were, we applied for 501c3 status, which is a potentially lengthy process. We engaged legal counsel to kind of lead us through it, and it wasn't terribly expensive. Maybe it was $10,000 roughly. That we feel was money well spent, because the opportunity to be consistent with your incorporating documents into your 501c3 application is critical, especially if your organization is going to focus in on any kind of low-income housing tax credits, which is the way we finance this project, and we'll get to in a second. But I think having that consistency throughout your 501c3 documents and your organizing documents is critically important.
Okay, so this is the best part, so I hope you guys are ready. It's all about people, right? I mean, clearly you need the money to do this, but it's really about people. And so when we decided to build community, and we're just in the beginning of the process, we asked for people to join us. You know, who's interested in being a part of an inclusive community? So we put out, you know, emails. You can just go through. So we put out emails. I had some school lists from the Diener School. We contacted friends and family. We used social media and basically asked the question, who wants to join our community? And as you can see from my picture on the right, where I'm really excited, this is what was happening. These people had to join. The membership fees are there. We didn't have professional members quite yet. They came on later, but we offered families and individuals memberships, and they actually had to fill out a form and, believe it or not, send it through the mail with their check. And our credit card processor and our nonprofit status wasn't quite available yet, wasn't quite ready. So this is how we had to do it. And as you can see from the slide, we had 700 members within the first 7 days. So we knew at that point that Main Street was going to be a huge success, that we had people invested wanting to be a part of this community. And we were just super excited. From there, we asked the lovely and fabulous Julie Ryan Silva to start creating a database, which a volunteer database, because everybody was emailing in, how can I help? We want to be a part of this. I'm a lawyer, I'm a graphic designer, I'm in the insurance business. Tell me what you want me to do. And so we created this volunteer database, which has been really critical in our development, to ask people to do things for us for free. So that's a very important part. We asked our members, again, building community, we asked them, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? What do you want to be a part of? And we came up with lots of different membership events that we have at least once a month. We have had events from coffees to happy hours, baseball games, bowling, bocce, concerts, community service, which is always going to be a big part of what we're going to offer, to empower our folks with helping other people and giving back, which is critically important to our mission. We have a yoga class that happens once a week. This fall, we're actually going to have an improv class, which will lead to an open mic night for several people who want to do it, which is super fun. And the one thing that I didn't talk about in building community, which is a really, really essential piece, is the fundraisers. So, our fundraisers, which I'm going to also talk about in a minute, but that's a big part of building community together, is having these incredible fundraising events to share and educate, share our mission and educate others, so that everyone understands that we all have a part and a responsibility in community and in helping vulnerable and marginalized populations. And we really feel that this is a population, the disability population is woefully underserved. And so part of our mission is really to educate others, including policymakers and legislators, and to come to the table, and everybody has a responsibility in this. So going back to our volunteers, we created some task forces to help with this, and these would be our suggestions for you as well. A task force to help with development, help to educate, community events, and real estate would be the areas that we would suggest. We had chairs for each event, and asked people to help, lead these events, to gather other people, and I think that's what led to these successful opportunities. Just a lot of volunteer service, and this was really instrumental for us in helping to spread the word about Main Street. I really believe that it's not just tapping into your own network, right? Because Scott and I have been tapping into our network for years for our school and other missions-driven issues that we believe in, and it was really tapping into other people's networks. So asking our volunteers, hey, where are your friends and family? And you're the educators at your school. Let's bring everybody together. So we hosted lots of gatherings and fundraisers at other people's houses to educate their friends and families, and their colleagues and their neighbors. We try to open a lot of network channels and obviously solicit our own friends and families for support. And in doing this, and in part of the educating part and getting the mission out, we tried to attend many different conferences. We tried to go in fact, we're going into the local public school system and their transition unit to talk about what Main Street is going to be and how we can help transition people better into adulthood. We've gone from everything from the Chamber of Commerce to help partner with local retailers and business owners, and to the University of Maryland and Georgetown and Montgomery College to partner with them to help, help us gather information and important data that will be important in our future and hopefully others. We've been at conferences from the Visionaries Conference in San Francisco by their Autism Society, the Williams Conference, Williams Syndrome Conference, and many other local conferences as well to help educate people and to share our mission.
So this is the point where we get to the realities of buying a piece of land or identifying a piece of land and, trying to actually put the deal together just from a real estate standpoint. And that's what I do in my professional life. So we had some unique situations, but I'll share with you, excuse me, what our process was, and hope that it will be helpful to you. We were very lucky. We had in mind, excuse me, being local here and being here for a very long time. We sort of knew generally where we wanted to be, and so we had some sites. We had some areas in mind, and we got very lucky to find a specific site that would meet our goals of being very close to public transportation. Our site is only 500 feet away from the Washington, D.C. Metro, and numerous bus routes that are both regional and countywide. So it was a great location from a transportation standpoint. And it happens to be in downtown Rockville, in this very active town center location, which is the seat of local Montgomery County government and the city of Rockville government. So there are a lot of opportunities for employment there, in addition to all the retailers. There's a movie theater nearby. There's a lot of opportunity for various employment opportunities. So that was a very important piece to us. So we got lucky in identifying the site. But early on, very early on, we engaged a design team to start not only the entitlement process, as it says on your screen, but to start really understanding how this building would function. And the design was very, very important from the very, very beginning. But our team included, obviously, the lead architect, and we brought in a landscape architect early on, engineers, which are several, not just one, but the civil engineers, as well as the mechanical and electrical and plumbing engineers and other utility engineers. And then in this area, and I assume in most, a land use attorney early on is very important. Again, we were very fortunate that this site was zoned appropriately. So the process that we had to go through for entitlement, while cumbersome on some fronts, could have been much, much worse had we had to go through a rezoning. So that the land use attorneys early on was a critical component to the team. As we started to develop the building, we thought it was important. You see on the right of your screen is a rendering. Believe it or not, it looks like a photo to me, but it's a rendering of what one of the areas of the community space is ultimately going to look like. And it was a great exercise for us. And you have to spend a little bit of money to do it, but it makes you think about how the spaces are going to be used, and give yourselves the opportunity to design to your goal, quite frankly. So we spent a lot of times, countless meetings, countless hours of back and forth on various parts of the design. I mean, we're just showing a small piece of it here, but it really did help when we finished. We came away with a couple of renderings, this one being included in the watermarks that you've seen on some of the other pages is some of the earlier renditions of the building. But it helped a huge amount with giving people a visual and we used it at the local planning departments and with our financing partners and with donors. So I highly, highly recommend, even if it's not what you ultimately end up building, I think people that you're trying to bring into your world, into your community with your vision, they need something to see. So I think that is certainly money well spent, and that can be, done perhaps by a volunteer, but something that people can actually see and think they can touch in terms of a physical building, I think is very helpful. So the financing of this project. For us, we were very clear very early on, and it'll go back to our principles of affordability, inclusivity, and sustainability. And we wanted to make sure that the financing aligned with that, and that our vision aligned with the potential financing. And we have been active in the affordable market for a very long time, and we utilize often low-income housing tax credits. And there could be several volumes of webinars just on low-income housing tax credits, so I won't go into too much detail, but in summary, low-income housing tax credits are a federal tax credit that are administered by state housing authorities. And in exchange for guaranteeing that you'll rent your apartments or you'll provide households to individuals that earn a certain amount of money or less based on the community standards, then you are given these tax credits. And the tax credits are then, you're able to monetize the credits. Wall Street would buy them. There are a lot of people that buy them that in turn generates the equity for the transaction, or generates some of the equity for the transaction. So they're very, very valuable. They're very difficult to get. But if your mission is affordability, or any sense of affordability, to me, it makes no sense not to try to pursue the low-income housing tax credits, because the benefits are so dramatic, and you've already committed to affordability. So I think they work very well with one another. In this case, they work perfectly. The second piece was inclusivity. And we were lucky enough in the state of Maryland, there is a capital grant that is issued by the Maryland Department of Health that we applied for and were lucky enough to get. And that dealt with providing a level of the units, which obviously we were interested in doing from the very beginning, that a portion of the units be set aside with individuals with varying needs. And the low-income housing tax credits also point to that, as each state has their own set of criteria. And in Maryland, inclusivity is one of them. So we're very lucky that we were able to kind of mirror those two as well. It became very valuable, a very important part of our capital stack. And then the final piece, which I touched on earlier a little bit, is the sustainability of the program. And this was really what we were pushing to various foundations and personal contributions. And as Jillian mentioned, the support of the project has been overwhelming, both in the number of people that have joined the movement, joined the cause, and also to the amount of people that have backed it by writing a check and contributing to this project with the mindset that the goal is to keep it going for as long as humanly possible, and gearing up the program to be financially sustainable for many, many, many years to come. And it's not to say that there won't always be a fundraising obligation from Main Street for all the programming, because I'm sure there will be. But the goal when we were trying to underwrite the project and finance it was to create as many opportunities as possible for, the funds from the operation of the apartment building, for example, to go to the programming to maintain that the project in perpetuity. And some other things that you'll forgive me for, they may not be exactly in the right order, but just to give you an idea of some of the things that happened kind of concurrently. So while Jillian was busy building, the community and the membership and all the programming, which is really the heart and soul of this is going to be a beautiful building, but it's a building nonetheless. So what lives inside the building is what's important. But unfortunately, building a building is not so easy sometimes, and there's a lot of things that go on throughout this process. So these are just a handful of things that I wanted to bring to your attention. The construction process. We were able to start the construction drawing process very, very early on, because one, I felt very confident that we would be able to finance the project, but I had a plan B if we didn't. So that may not be something that you want to invest in early on, but I do think the preliminary drawings are critically important from a few slides ago that give you some basic design, and the renderings I think is critically important. We value engineered throughout the entire process, meaning we brought in subcontractors and other professionals to help us think through the design of the building and the constructability of the building. We're on a very, very, very tight site in an urban area. It's a complex construction process, but we were very well prepared for it early on, and that value engineering ended up saving us, hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout the process. And then I think the other big piece was the design feedback with Jillian and other people that are going to operate Main Street, to make sure that we have the right spaces, and that we can get in there everything that we envision being in there. So that worked out very well as well. The land use process that I mentioned a little bit earlier is a complex process here. Luckily, again, the land was zoned, but we had, I think it was 5 different public hearings on this site. Happily, we came out on top on all 5, or we wouldn't be talking right now. And countless community meetings, countless. So we were in front of all of the neighbors and other stakeholders and policy makers in the area, outlining our vision and trying to bring them on board. Not always easy, and there will always be somebody next door to you that says, I don't want this. And, you just gotta kind of push through and make it happen anyway. So anecdotally, some of our biggest foes who fought us all the way through it, as soon as we finished our last hearing and got approval, they were the first ones to come up to us and ask us how they can move into the building. So just a little insights into how that works at times. And then in concurrent to all of this, we did apply for that grant through the Maryland Department of Health, which I mentioned earlier. And then towards the kind of the culmination of everything is this low-income housing tax credit application. And it's a very, very lengthy and detailed process. But again, the reward is big. So I think it's very worthwhile, especially if the affordability is a main driver. And they accept applications on a certain date, and then they have a meaningful period of time, the state does, to review it and to tell you if you win them, and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very long process, but we were able to sort of design to that process because we knew how to navigate through the low-income housing tax credits. And in general,
the journey continues, right? So before we answer a couple of your questions, we're just going to close up with, as we're building the building, and Scott and his team are doing an amazing job, we continue to build our community and still engaging our volunteers, our membership. We have professional workshops and networking opportunities. We have educational seminars. We have this incredible neurodiverse, organically created community of people of all ages and stages, and as I said, neurodiversities, and we're already playing and learning and giving and supporting each other. And we've already created, even without the physical space ready for us yet, we've already created a community and a place where everyone belongs. And at the end of the day, that is really what this is about. Our journey is about belonging, and I'm creating something that is really uniquely special for everyone and anyone. And so that is Main Street. And I think our last slide is about some resources. So I encourage you to look on our website, learn more about Main Street, about what we're doing. I think our mission of inclusivity and sustainability and affordability is different than what you're going to see at other places around the country, although I encourage you to really look at the Autism Housing Network, and the website is there for you, and look at what's happening around the country. You learn about best practices. Julie and I just attended a symposium at First Place with Denise Resnick in Arizona, which was incredible. We learned so much. Talk to people about what they're doing. There's so many places around the country. We used a consultant named Desiree Kamika, who's hopefully on the line now. She was incredible in helping us and can be helpful for all of you. She understands tax credits and how they work, and she knows the different states and what they offer. And we also encourage you to really be a part of Main Street, be a part of our mission, follow our progress, join our membership. And we hope that we're going to answer a few questions now, but we hope this was helpful. We're also going to follow up with an evaluation. We really hope you complete the evaluation and help us learn what you're looking for, future webinars that we can provide to be of service to you. And if there's anything else that you need, you can always feel free to email Scott or I. You can find our email information on our website.
Okay, this is Julie again, and we have had a number of questions come in. Thank you all. For those that have questions, feel free to type them in on the side of your screen. And again, if we don't get to them right now, we will email you after the webinar. So we've had a number of questions related to membership. We could start with those. Jillian, can you define what the membership looks like now, and then also maybe how that would be different when the building's completed? You mentioned there's 1,300 members now. Who are those members exactly? And then do you see that that's going to change when the building opens next year?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So membership now, members receive our monthly e-blast, which have all of our activities and workshops and opportunities to gather, and that's all a part of the yearly membership that people pay for now. We have 99 professional members who have joined us, and the rest are individual and family members. And again, it's really just being part of this inclusive community, and we invite you to join us in our membership. And then I think as the building evolves and as the building is operational, our membership will slightly shift into, it will definitely be a higher fee, and it will be, membership will be for people who are not living in the building. The residents will be able to use all of the gathering spaces, but membership will still be to be an opportunity to join us for all of our events, to access and utilize our ground floor spaces, which will be a teaching kitchen and a multimedia room that you saw a rendering of. We have a wellness center. We have a coffee shop and a classroom and transition space. And membership then will allow you to come and join us for vocational coaching or cooking classes, nutrition classes, bingo night, baseball games, book clubs, and Super Bowl parties. And it will really just provide people an opportunity to learn, to live, to play, to grow together.
Great. And where are you holding the events now prior to the building being built?
Currently, we have the events all over our county. So we, different restaurants, outdoor spaces, parks, community centers. The Jewish Community Center of Rockville has been amazing in allowing us to use their spaces for seminars and workshops and a place to gather.
Okay, and regarding the community space in the building, can you go over again how large that space is and how you decided on the size?
So the space is approximately 10,000 square feet. And if you're looking at your screen now, at the very front, there's a coffee shop. That includes that. It's a small coffee shop, but it has a mezzanine level, so it could really activate the street. So we're counting that amongst the 10,000 square feet of community space. And then the rest of it on the first floor is about 8,500 square feet with a wellness center, a yoga studio, that big great room, kitchen and great room that you saw an image of earlier, and a classroom and some small offices for the management of the building. And then on the second floor is Main Street's offices and some other shared conference rooms. As far as the design and the desire for the space, to determine how big the space was, it's a good question. It fit very well into the footprint. So we sort of backed into what we could actually fit. You can tell a little bit by this image. The building is much longer. It's a little bit narrower than we would have liked. So this is what kind of fit, and it worked. It worked very well. How the spaces are filled and used, and if it's enough, is sort of yet to be determined. But we backed into it based on what was available.
Okay. How will parking be handled for the building, and was that an issue in the design?
Parking is always an issue. It's always an issue, and there is one level of underground parking that I think is 46 parking spaces. Again, it's a 70-unit building, and it will be a very vibrant and active community space. So it's certainly not able to park itself on the site, but we are lucky. We're near the metro, as I mentioned, and there is ample public parking available within a 2-block, or even less. There's a parking garage across the street from us, actually. So we feel comfortable that there will be enough parking. Or at least nearby parking. The issue and the deciding factor on it is that to go underground with parking is expensive, and we could have added another level of underground parking, and it would have added a lot of time to the construction. Number one, but number two, it would have added over $2 million to the overall capital stack. So it was deemed not worth it to us because there is so much parking available in the area.
Okay, and how will residents be selected for the building, those with disabilities and others?
A big part of the low-income housing tax credit program is compliance. And we have made, and we have an agreement, we have a legal agreement that we will serve various segments of the community, both from income standpoint and those that would qualify for the units set aside for individuals with varying needs. And so there's a pretty extensive vetting process that will be done for the residential piece. Will be done by the management company. That's pretty standard for any low-income housing tax credit project. So people will have to qualify, obviously financially, and then meet the criteria that's established to occupy one of the units that are designated to be set aside.
Are you concerned that you're going to have far more applicants than available openings, and what will you provide to those who can't get in?
I'm afraid that from a success standpoint on the operation of the building, I really don't envision any vacancy issues at all. I think we'll be fully occupied. I think we'll have a list that will exceed we'll have a list of people that would want to live there that would exceed by 10 times or more, unfortunately. So as far as what we can do for them if they can't get into the building, I think the opportunity for membership is great. A lot of individuals that are in our world now, in our community, already live nearby in other apartment buildings and other homes. And some have recently moved to the area in anticipation of Main Street being built because of the community space. So the opportunity to share that and to spread it out a little bit with the community space and the membership hopefully satisfies that potential issue.
Thank you, Scott. Julian, we have a couple of questions about the caregiving model. Who is going to provide services to the community? Will we, as Main Street, manage that?
Yes, thank you, Julie. So at Main Street, we have a different model than many. So we are a housing model, a housing provider. We are not a service provider. Many of the models around the country, you'll see combine that, and that's a wonderful option too. For us, we will be providing a wonderful weekly schedule of events, including lots of opportunities to socialize and learn together. We will have a Main Street staff that will help facilitate all of these events. and people living in the building, for our residents with disabilities living in the building, for a fee-based service, they can hire a community assistant, almost like a resident assistant, who can help and kind of be a safety net and provide a couple hours a week of service, of help to the individual who might need it. It is not a one-to-one program. We do not offer that full support services. So our mantra basically is bring your own independence. And that was a mantra created by John, one of our members. And so if you need more supports, and those supports are given to you by a caregiver or a sister or a friend or a support service person that you hire, you bring those people with you to help you access and utilize the programming and the services and the activities.
Do you have a sense of staffing numbers, how many Main Street staff you will be?
I do. Right now, I think we're at 8 full-time Main Street staff members.
Okay, we've gotten a few more questions about funding issues. Can you describe more about the grant that was obtained from the Maryland Department of Health?
Okay, so the grant was a capital grant for projects that serve various segments of the community underneath the Maryland Department of Health umbrella. And this one was through the DDA segment. So it was for projects that are new construction or renovations that you're creating something that isn't already there. And we were successful in getting that.
One of the issues, or one of the criteria in which to receive the capital money, is that you're providing inclusive, whatever you're doing, whether it's living or programming for this capital money, there was an inclusion aspect to it.
Okay, and how did you obtain seed money to fund pre-construction costs like legal fees, architectural drawings, and so forth?
The seed money came from us, from Jillian and myself and my company. So we fronted the project, and I recognize that that's kind of a unique situation. So we were very lucky with that, but we were the source of the initial funding.
Okay. Can you talk more about the model of having 25% of the units set aside for people with disabilities? How would you ensure that it doesn't become 100%, for example?
I think that's a really good question, and one that we have kind of, I don't want to say struggled with, but have certainly been aware of. The goal, obviously, the overarching goal is inclusivity. So we don't want to be exclusive one way or the other. We don't want it to be 100% anything. So I think that the opportunity, so 25% was a very comfortable number for us from a mission standpoint, and it happened to be a similar number that the state looked to with the low-income housing tax credit. So it worked out pretty well across the board. It met our mission perfectly. In terms of guaranteeing, if somebody comes into the building to rent an apartment, and they're not asking for a set-aside unit specifically, obviously, for a variety of reasons, we can't deny them unless they don't qualify otherwise to live in the building because they may have some sort of disability or need. So I don't suspect that the building will be right at 25% set aside. I believe that there will be more individuals with needs than the 25%. That's by design. But on the other side, there are the opportunity for affordability. 75% of the units are affordable. So the opportunity to fill those, there's still a tremendous difference between our affordable rents and a comparable building that's a market rate project. So I think the number of applicants with and without disabilities will be pretty dramatic.
Do you envision that residents with disabilities and those without will interact? How do you envision being able to accomplish that?
I think that's really the goal, is that we're creating what community looks like, a microcosm of real community. And just by providing spaces where people can gather and opportunities for people to come together to socialize and be educated and enjoy our community, which is, we're in the Rockville Town Center, which is, home to much retail and restaurants and movies. And so just by having that, all this entertainment around us, that just brings people together organically.
Scott, this is probably for you. Do you see that there's a way for a building to be affordable without getting the low-income housing tax credit?
I would think that to be market-driven, but very difficult. It doesn't mean it can't happen. Perhaps if a big foundation were involved with helping underwrite it, and depending on, again, your specific market or really your sub-market within your market, to see how, with construction costs and land costs and entitlement processes and et cetera. But in this general area, where we are in the greater DC area, it's virtually impossible without a very, very sizable philanthropic commitment.
Will any food service be provided in the building, or assistance with laundry or things like that? How independent do you envision the residents being?
Well, I think the independence is going to vary from person to person. So food service, we are not providing food service. However, we have a industrial-sized kitchen downstairs and attached to a multimedia room, and we hope there will be many communal dinners. People might order in from there. They might cook together. All of the apartments have small but wonderful kitchens, so they can access that, have people over and cook together in their units. Again, retail and restaurants are, within a block. So I envision people, really going out to the community to have some meals as well, and be community integrated with that opportunity. In terms of laundry, we are not going to be doing laundry. I think that if someone needs a little bit of help, that's when they're going to use that community assistant for that and pay the monthly fee for that assistant that could come in on Sundays or on the weekends and help them do activities of daily living, including laundry.
We've also had some questions about safety issues. How do you see ensuring safety for the residents in the building?
Safety is really paramount. It's our biggest concern right from the get-go. We are going to have, first of all, every resident will have a fob to get up to their room. There's only one way into the building, other than the parking garage, which will obviously have which will have a secure entrance. So there will be one way in, and that will be where you pass a 24/7 security person that's going to be at the desk. And you will have to have a fob to get up through, the elevator. We're also researching some other technologies that we may use for safety. So looking into, providing the safest environment we can. But yeah, safety is a huge concern. And if anybody on this call has any experience with successful things they've done to keep people safe, please let us know. We'd appreciate it.
Can you give estimates of the actual costs for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom?
Generally, the cost on a monthly 2-bedroom, I'll just use as a model unit, is about $1,200 to $1,300 a month. Would be an average rent across the board for the various income levels that we're serving. We will be serving households that earn 60% of the area median income, 50% of that income, and then some residents at 30% of that income. And then a handful of units will be set aside for just market rate units.
Will members be given priority when you select residents?
Nope, members are not given priority.
Is there anything you could see that you would do differently at this stage of the game?
From my standpoint, maybe having a little more time. we feel a little pressed for time. We found the real estate pretty quickly. We kind of fell into some good luck, and which was wonderful. But it's a lot of work, and you need time to kind of sort things out and create systems and operations and processes. And I would say you probably have to circle back with us in about a year, and then we can talk more about pains and pitfalls and things that we might do differently. At this point, I don't think we know quite yet.
Okay, we have a few more questions that we're not going to be able to get to. We want to respect the hour time limit, but we will respond to those who typed in questions. We can email you after the event. I'm just going to end with this question. Do you have future plans for expanding beyond the building in Rockville?
We would love for there to be a Main Street on every main street in America, quite honestly. We would love for this model to be everywhere. And we do see lots of choices and lots of options for people with varying needs and income levels happening around the country, which is amazing. And that's why you want to look at that Autism Housing Network to get a feel for concepts and models that are happening all over. Yes, and we are already actually talking to our county executive about land and other options available in our county. We're working with a group in Northern Virginia who hope to be able to, the City Center group, if you're a Northern Virginia person, you want to get involved with them. And yes, we are hoping to expand and help others create their model as well. And I think as we end the call, I'm going to end with this. It is a lot of work to do this, and it requires a husband like mine, right? My chief of staff, and his brother, Todd, who should be listening on the phone, and their incredible staff. But I think, it can be done. And if you leave with anything today, I hope the message isn't that it's too much work and it's too difficult. I hope the message is that it's a message of hope and possibility, that you can leave here, you can find people, gather your people, figure out, be resourceful and problem solve, and use us and Desiree and other people to help you do this, but it can happen. So it's up to us. There are lots of things happening with public-private partnerships, and government understands that there are many people they're going to need to house and program for in the future as the numbers of people with disabilities are staggering and rising. So people, it's our time. This is our time to create opportunity. So you do your best to do yours, and let us know if you need us.
All right, we will end there. Thank you so much to all who've joined us today. Please do watch your email for information about how to access the recording, as well as a PDF of the slides. And we will send an evaluation, and we'd love to hear your feedback and ideas that you have for future webinars or other ways that we could help support all of your ideas and projects. Thank you very much.